Dr. Alexander Volkov hadn't slept for 36 hours. His eyes burned with fatigue as he bent over an ancient manuscript lying on a table in the Moscow archives. The light from the desk lamp cast harsh shadows on his face, the face of a man who had just discovered something that could revolutionize human history. His hands trembled as he carefully turned the pages, dating back to the 14th century, but containing references to texts at least 5,000 years old. It was the diary of a monk, a scribe who worked in a monastery on the banks of the Volga. But this was no ordinary diary. It was a copy of a copy of a copy of an ancient text the monk had found in the dungeon of a ruined sanctuary. The text told of people who came from the sky, the knowledge they imparted, and the warning they left before disappearing. They told us they would return when humanity was ready, or when the time of oblivion came. A monk wrote nearly 700 years ago. They left us signs written in stone, in numbers, in the stars. Those who can read these signs will understand the truth. The rest will live in illusion until the hour of awakening comes. Volkov put the manuscript aside and stood, walking to the window. Moscow slept below. Millions of lights, millions of lives, unaware of what was happening in this small office. He was a professor of ancient civilization history, a man who had dedicated his life to studying artifacts that official science preferred to ignore. But even for him, this was too much. His phone vibrated on the table. A text message from an unknown number. "You found the manuscript. Now find the map. It's in the Vatican library, in a section not shown to tourists. Access code 777. Hurry. They already know you're close." Volkov read the message 3 times. His heart began to beat faster. He hadn't told anyone about the manuscript. No one. Only his assistant, whom he trusted as much as he trusted himself. But she was in Rome, working in the Vatican library. It couldn't be her. It was someone else. Someone who was following him. Volkov quickly gathered the manuscript and hid it in a special case protected from electromagnetic radiation, a habit he'd developed after one of his colleagues mysteriously disappeared, leaving only burned documents behind. He put on his coat, grabbed his passport, and left the archives. The streets were empty. It was 4 in the morning. Volkov hailed a taxi and gave the airport address. As the car drove through the nighttime city, he looked out the window and wondered what would happen next. He knew he was crossing some invisible line. After this, there would be no turning back. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more stories. Chapter 2. Library of Secrets. Rome greeted him with a cold wind and gray skies. Volkov walked straight into the Vatican, using the scholar's credentials he'd earned 5 years earlier during a research project. The guards barely glanced at him. To them, he was just another boring professor, come to study ancient texts. The library was enormous, a labyrinth of shelves stretching deep into the building. Volkov knew where to look. He descended into the basement, where the oldest and most valuable documents were kept. A guard was asleep in the corner. Volkov passed him, holding his breath. The section he was looking for was in the far corner, behind an iron door. Volkov approached the electronic lock and entered the code, 777. The door opened with a soft click. It was cold inside, very cold. The room was small, no more than 5 meters long, but the shelves covering the walls contained hundreds of documents. Volkov turned on the flashlight and began searching. He didn't know what he was looking for, but when he saw it, he would know. 20 minutes passed. Volkov was beginning to think it was a trap when his eye fell on a leather binding hidden behind other documents. He pulled it out. On the cover was an inscription in ancient Greek, "Map of the World of the Gods." Volkov opened the map. His breath caught. It was a map of Earth, but not the one he knew. It depicted continents that had long since disappeared beneath the sea. It marked cities that never existed in official history. And on it were lines connecting various points around the world, forming a complex geometric pattern. Volkov recognized this pattern. It was the same geometry embedded in the pyramids, Stonehenge, Machu Picchu, and Baalbek. It was a map of the energy grid. Volkov heard footsteps. Someone was descending into the basement. He quickly tucked the map into his bag and left the room, closing the door behind him. The guard was still asleep. Volkov passed him and went upstairs. When he left the library, a car was waiting for him. The driver was a young man with cold eyes. "Get in, Professor Volkov," the driver said. "We have something you need to see." Volkov didn't move. "Who are you?" "We guard the truth," the driver replied. "Just as the ancients guarded it. Get in. If we wanted to harm you, you'd already be dead." It was strange logic, but it was logical. On. Volkov got into the car. Chapter 3. The Underground City. The car was heading south, toward Naples. Volkov looked at the map on the driver's phone. They weren't going south. They were going east, then west, then south again. The route was convoluted, designed to confuse anyone following them. 3 hours later, they stopped at an ordinary house on the outskirts of a small town. The driver got out and opened the car door. "Welcome to Heliopolis," he said. Or, as they call it in the modern world, Bahia. Volkov knew the place. Bahia was an ancient Roman resort that had been partially submerged by the sea. But he didn't know there might be something else beneath it. The driver led him into the house, descended into the basement, opened a hidden door, and they found themselves in a tunnel. The tunnel was carved into the rock, and its walls were covered in symbols. Volkov recognized them. They were the same symbols he had seen in the manuscript. They walked through the tunnel for about an hour. Volkov lost all sense of direction, all sense of time. He was in a state between sleep and waking, where reality seemed blurred, unreal. Then the tunnel opened into a huge underground cavern. Volkov stopped, speechless. Before him was a city, an entire city carved into the rock. Buildings, streets, squares, everything was there. But these weren't ruins. This was a living place. Volkov saw people walking the streets, working, talking. It was like entering another world. "Welcome to Heliopolis," the driver repeated. "The true Heliopolis, a city that has existed for 5,000 years. "It's impossible," Volkov whispered. "It can't be real." "Oh, it's very real," said a voice behind him. "And this is only the beginning." Volkov turned. An old man stood behind him. His face was wrinkled, his eyes ancient, but his gaze was sharp as a blade. He was dressed in simple white robes, and on his chest hung the symbol Volkov had seen in the manuscript. "I am Elias," the old man said. "I am the keeper of knowledge, and I have waited a long time for you, Professor Volkov. A very long time." Part 2. Awakening. Chapter 4. The Truth in Stone. Elias led Volkov to a large building in the center of the underground city. Inside was a library, but no ordinary library. The shelves contained not only books and manuscripts, but also artifacts, tools, and devices that Volkov couldn't identify. Some of them glowed with a soft blue light. "This is a legacy," Elias said, gesturing toward the shelves. "This is what remains of the civilization you read about in manuscripts. A civilization that existed long before the Egyptians, Sumerians, or Mayans." "But how is that possible?" Volkov asked. "If such a civilization existed, why is there no evidence? Why doesn't mainstream science know anything about it?" Elias smiled. Because mainstream science is looking in the wrong direction. It looks for evidence on the surface, in ruins, in artifacts. But the true evidence is in stone, in mathematics, in the stars. It's in the pyramids. Elias walked over to one of the shelves and pulled out an ancient scroll. He unrolled it before Volkov. The scroll contained a diagram of a pyramid, but not just any diagram. It was a three-dimensional model showing the internal structure, energy flows, and resonant frequencies. The pyramids weren't tombs, Elias said. They were machines. Machines for generating, storing, and transmitting energy. They were the hubs of a global network that spanned the entire planet. Each pyramid was connected to the next through invisible energy lines. Together, they created a unified system that powered the entire civilization. But why are they empty? Volkov asked. If they were machines, why aren't there any mechanisms inside? Because the mechanism is emptiness, Elias replied. The shape of the pyramid, its geometry, its orientation to the stars, all of this creates a resonant field. This field interacts with the energy of the Earth, with the energy of the cosmos, and creates a flow of energy that can be directed and harnessed. But for this to work, there must be emptiness inside. Emptiness isn't absence, it's possibility. Volkov sat down, trying to digest the information. If this is true, then why did this civilization disappear? Why couldn't they save themselves if they had such technology? Elias sat down next to him. His expression turned sad. Because they made a mistake, he said. The same mistake you're making now. They thought technology could solve all problems. They thought they were invincible. They began using the pyramid's energy, not for creation, but for destruction. They created weapons capable of destroying entire cities. They started a war for control of the energy, for control of the world. What happened? Volkov asked, although he already knew the answer. A catastrophe occurred, Elias replied. The war destroyed the system. The pyramids were damaged. The energy grid was severed. Civilization collapsed. Most of the population was wiped out. Those who survived lost their knowledge, lost their technology, lost their understanding of how their own system worked. They became primitive. They returned to the Stone Age. And the pyramids? Volkov asked. Did they remain? Yes, Elias said. The pyramids remained. They were too massive to be completely destroyed. And the survivors, those who remembered something of the ancient civilization, they rebuilt the pyramids. They encoded knowledge within them, hoping that someday, thousands of years from now, someone would be able to decipher the message. Someone would be able to understand what happened, and someone would be able to avoid repeating the same mistakes. But we repeat them, Volkov said. We repeat the same mistakes. We create weapons, we wage wars, we destroy the planet. Yes, Elias agreed. You repeat them. And the time for you to choose another path is quickly running out. Chapter 5. Choice. Elias led Volkov into a room filled with screens and instruments. It looked like a command center, like the control center of some vast system. This is the monitoring center, Elias said. From here, we monitor the state of the pyramids, the state of the energy grid, the state of the planet. And I must tell you, Professor Volkov, the situation is critical. Elias pointed to one of the screens. It showed a map of Earth, covered in red dots. The red dots are where the energy grid is damaged, Elias explained. These are places where catastrophes will occur in the coming years. Earthquakes, tsunamis, volcanic eruptions. The planet is trying to restore balance, but the balance is broken. Humans have disrupted it by polluting the atmosphere, cutting down forests, pumping oil from the ground. They have disrupted the planet's resonance. What can be done? Volkov asked. The pyramids must be activated, Elias said. They must be restored and activated. This will restore the energy grid. It will restore the planet's balance. But this requires knowledge, technology, and will. But how? Volkov asked. How do we activate the pyramids? How do we restore a system that was destroyed thousands of years ago? Elias approached one of the devices and pressed several buttons. A 3D model of the Great Pyramid of Giza appeared on the screen. The key is in a hidden chamber, Elias said. A chamber discovered in 2017 using cosmic ray scanning. This chamber contains a crystal, an artifact of an ancient civilization. This crystal can be used to activate the pyramid, but this requires information, coordinates, and access codes. Where is this information? Volkov asked. Here, Elias replied, pointing to the map Volkov had brought from the Vatican. On this map, the map shows the location of all the pyramids, all the energy centers, all the energy transmission lines. It shows how the system worked and how it can be restored. Volkov looked at the map, his mind working quickly. He understood what it meant. It meant he had to choose. He had to choose between remaining safe, ignorant, continuing to live in the world he knew, or he had to choose the truth, choose action, choose to try to save humanity from itself. Give me time to think, Volkov said. You have 48 hours, Elias replied. After this, we must act, with or without you. Part 3, Rebellion. Chapter 6, The Network. Volkov spent those 48 hours in the Heliopolis library, studying ancient texts, studying the map, studying the mathematics embedded in the pyramids. And the more he studied, the clearer it became. Everything was connected. Everything was part of a single plan, a single system, a single message. The pyramids weren't just monuments, they were instructions. Each pyramid contained information about the one next to it. Each was connected to the next through mathematical relationships, through astronomical alignments, through geometric patterns. Together, they formed a map of how to restore the system. Volkov realized that Elias was right. The system could be restored, but this required more than simply activating the pyramids. Human consciousness had to be changed. People had to understand that they were not alone, that they were not the first, that they were not the last. Convey the message the ancients left 5,000 years ago. When the 48 hours were up, Volkov emerged from the library and said to Elias, "I'll help you." Elias nodded, as if he already knew Volkov would choose this. "Then let's begin," Elias said. "Let's begin with Egypt. Let's begin with the Great Pyramid of Giza. Let's begin with the activation." Chapter 7, Journey to Giza. Volkov and Elias flew to Cairo under assumed names. They stayed at a small hotel in the Giza area, not far from the pyramids. Volkov looked at the pyramids from the hotel window, and they looked completely different than before. Before, they were simply ancient monuments, tourist attractions. Now they looked alive, pulsating, full of hidden energy. "How do we get inside?" V asked. Volkov. "The pyramid is guarded. Only tourists are allowed in." "There is another way," Elias replied. "A way known only to a few. A way used by the ancient builders." Elias took a small crystal from his bag. It glowed with a soft blue light. "This crystal will open doors closed to others," Elias said. "It resonates at the same frequency as the pyramid. When we approach a certain point, the doors will open." They left the hotel at night when the tourists were asleep. They walked through the sand, past guards who seemed oblivious. Volkov realized Elias had used some method to make them invisible, or at least unnoticeable. They approached the Great Pyramid of Giza. Elias lifted the crystal, and a crack appeared in the stone. It was a door, disguised as ordinary stone. They entered. It was cold inside the pyramid. Volkov felt his hair stand on end, his skin break out in goosebumps. He sensed energy, powerful, ancient, waiting. Elias led him through corridors that Volkov hadn't seen on any maps of the pyramid. They descended deeper and deeper, deeper into the heart of the pyramid, and finally, they emerged into a huge chamber. It was the chamber discovered in 2017. But now, Volkov could see. I saw it with my own eyes. And in the center of the chamber, on a stone pedestal, lay a crystal. It was enormous, the size of a human head, and it glowed with a bright blue light. "This is the core of the system," Elias said. "This is what powers the entire energy network." This was placed here 5,000 years ago, and it waited for the moment when humanity would be ready to activate the system again. Volkov approached the crystal. As he approached, the crystal began to glow brighter. Volkov placed his hand on the crystal, and his mind was filled with visions. He saw an ancient civilization, saw cities glowing with energy, saw people who flew in machines, who traveled between the stars. He saw war, he saw destruction, he saw the fall. He saw survivors trying to rebuild what was lost, who built pyramids, who encoded knowledge in stone. And then the visions faded, and Volkov fell to his knees, weeping. "Now you have seen," Elias said. "Now you understand. Now you know what must be done." Chapter 8. Activation. Volkov rose to his feet. His face was wet with tears, but his eyes were clear and determined. "What must be done?" he asked. "The crystal must be activated," Elias replied. "For this, blood is needed. The blood of one who is ready to accept responsibility, who is ready to become the guardian of the system." Volkov understood. This was the moment of choice, the moment when he had to dedicate himself entirely to this mission. He pulled a knife from his pocket and cut his palm. Blood dripped onto the crystal. The crystal began to glow brighter, brighter, brighter. The light filled the entire chamber, filled the entire world. Volkov felt the energy flowing through him, his body becoming a conduit for something greater, something ancient, something powerful. And then the light faded, and all was quiet. "It's done," Elias said. "The pyramid is activated. The energy network is beginning to recover. But this is only the beginning. We need to activate other pyramids, other energy centers. We need to restore the entire system." "How long will it take?" Volkov asked. "Weeks, months, maybe years," Elias replied. "But with each activated pyramid, the system will grow stronger. And when the system is fully restored, the planet will be healed. The climate will stabilize. Earthquakes will cease. Tsunamis will become a thing of the past." "And people?" Volkov asked. "What will happen to people?" "People will awaken," Elias replied. "They will understand that they are not alone, that they are not the first, that they are not the last. They will understand that they are part of something greater, that they are responsible not only for themselves, but for the planet, for the future, for the next generations. And they will choose a different path. They will choose the path of creation instead of destruction, the path of cooperation instead of war, the path of harmony instead of conflict." "Do you believe this?" Volkov asked. "I believe it," Elias replied, "because I have seen it before. I have seen people choose the right path, and I saw them choose the wrong path. But I believe that this time they will choose correctly, because this time they will know. This time they will understand. This time, they will have a choice. Epilogue: A message for the future. A year after the activation of the Great Pyramid of Giza, strange things happened. All over the world, people began reporting visions, dreams, a feeling that something had changed. Scientists noticed that the Earth's magnetic field had stabilized. Climatologists noticed that climate change had slowed. Seismologists noticed that the number of earthquakes had decreased. Volkov continued his work. He and Elias activated pyramids in Mexico, China, Bosnia, all the places marked on the ancient map. With each activation, the system IT grew stronger. The planet grew healthier. But Volkov knew this was only the beginning. The true work lay ahead. The true work was to help humanity understand what had happened, to help it awaken, to help it choose the right path. Volkov wrote a book about the pyramids, about an ancient civilization, about a message left 5,000 years ago. Mainstream science rejected him, called him crazy, called his theories pseudoscience. But people read his book. People began to understand. People began to awaken. And the pyramids, silent witnesses of millennia, continued to stand, continued to glow with a soft blue light, continued to transmit their message to those ready to hear it. Because the emptiness within the pyramids wasn't an absence, it was an opportunity. An opportunity for humanity to choose a different path. An opportunity for the planet to heal. An opportunity for the future to be better than the past. And Volkov knew this message would be heard. Because the message was ancient, it was true, and it was necessary. The message was simple. You are not alone. You are not the first. You are not the last. Learn from the mistakes of the past. Choose creation over destruction. Choose harmony over conflict. Choose a future worth passing on to future generations. And this message, encoded in stone 5,000 years ago, was finally heard.